how do I choose a short-term rental market for my real estate investing? So I can tell you my parameters for short-term rental investing. So I want to make sure I'm in a classic vacation market, because I don't want laws to change randomly because of hotel lobbyists saying, hey, hotel or short-term rentals are bad. Here's why we should get rid of them. Here's 20 grand. And, Congress people locally will change laws and legislation banning short-term rentals. And that happens in major cities time and time again. I'm in Maryland, so in Baltimore City, for example, that happened. They, basically outlawed or disallowed short-term rentals in the city itself. I think this was several years ago. So the point is, in those major cities, that legislation can change. So what I'm looking for is a vacation market that, number one, legislation is in our favor where short-term rentals are allowed, and that legislation has been in place for at least 10 plus years, for a long time. A long track record of that market being very friendly to short-term rentals. So typically you want to think classically, where do I love to go on vacation? So as a person growing up in Maryland, we used to go to Ocean City, Maryland, 3 hours to the beach, a little farther south, maybe to Outer Banks in North Carolina. That's about 7 hours for us. Sometimes we go to Florida, different parts, but you want to go to a place where the predominant revenue for that market is vacationers. And most of the people that actually service those vacationers, the cleaners at the hotels, the cleaners at the short-term rental places, the handy people, all the people that work at the restaurants in that vacation town, none of them actually live in the town because it's too expensive to do so. They live within 30 minutes around that town, and they drive into work every day to service all the vacationers that are there constantly all throughout the year. So those are the classic earmarks of a true vacation market where, number one, the legislation's in your favor for short-term rentals for decades, ideally. Number two, no one actually lives in the town that actually works there. They can't afford it. They're actually driving into the town to service the long-term vacationers that are there constantly. So that's what you want to think of. So the reason I chose Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, for many reasons, but number one, it's the number one vacation market in the United States, hands down, year in and year out. I love Pigeon Forge for many reasons. One, the legislation for short-term rentals has been in place for decades. It's been a short-term rental spot, vacation spot, I believe since the 70s at least. Thank you, Dolly Parton. And, if you look at the, I was just checking out the graph earlier, even since 2008, when things were bad with the recession, the last major recession we had in 2008, there were still over 9 million visitors to the Smoky Mountains National Park, which is right where Pigeon Forge is, and Gatlinburg is just north, within 20 minutes north of that Smoky Mountain National Park. So that draws a tremendous amount of visitors every year to that town. And since then, it has gradually been scaling up. Now, obviously, it met its peak in 2021. There were over 14 million visitors, and that was because of revenge vacationing. Everyone was forced to be in their homes, and then when they were finally allowed to spend money and go on vacations, people went crazy that year. But last year, in a more normal year, it was still almost 13 million visitors. So the point is, there's a tremendous amount of visitors there year in and year out because of the national park. So the people that love to look for wildlife, go hiking, fishing, as well as the in-town draws for the family stuff, the touristy stuff. So Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg both have that, where there's tons of shops, restaurants, experiences, mini golf, shows, events. There's a ton of stuff. It's crazy. So ton of volume there every year. So it's an in-demand market, the number one in the United States. So if you're going to choose a market, why not choose the number one market? That was my thinking. So that's how I chose my short-term rental market. There are other markets that are almost, not quite, but almost as profitable, and you can look them up. Start with number of visitors per year is helpful. Some of the larger markets I'm thinking of would be in, I believe, Galveston, Texas, and then Gulf Shores, Alabama, and then the Florida Panhandle has several cities. I believe there's like Destin Beach, Panama City Beach, 30A. They're all in that Gulf Shores, or in that, Gulf Shores panhandle, basically. So you have Florida, you have very pristine beaches, you have the nice warmer weather, so you have the longer seasons. Now it's the panhandle of Florida, so it's the north side, so there are still, colder times. There is a winter there, but it's super mild by comparison to the Northeast. Like, they're 50-degree crazy January versus up here in the Northeast, we're used to, 20, 30 degrees teens sometimes close to zero. So nothing by comparison, but their season is longer, right? Because of the warmer temps. So, but for my money, the number one vacation market is short-term rental is Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And the other bonus to that market is, unlike the markets I just mentioned that are in Florida or Galveston, Texas, or even Outer Banks, North Carolina, I mentioned earlier, in those markets you have a much higher homeowner's insurance cost because of hurricanes, if you're talking about the Florida or Gulf Coast. And then Outer Banks, same deal. Hurricanes are more prevalent, so your homeowner's insurance is going to be much higher because you not only will have that, but you also have to typically purchase, depending on how close you are to the water, you also maybe have to get flood insurance. So insurance is a huge factor in the costs that will eat into your profits on a monthly basis. And lastly, property taxes. So if you don't know, Tennessee has one of the lowest property taxes probably in America. So normally the assessed value of the homes are similar. They're still less than where I live in Maryland, but the difference is Tennessee is only going to tax you on 25% of that. So let's say the home, for example, I'll give Coors Cabin as an example. I believe they assess the value of that cabin in Tennessee. The county has it at roughly like $460,000, but I only pay property taxes on 25% of that value. So instead of paying property taxes at the county rate and state rate of $463,000 of value, I'm only paying it against $116,000 of value. So, I think my property tax bill for Coors Cabin last year for the whole year was like $650 or something stupid low. Versus Maryland, my primary residence I'm sitting in right now shooting this video, I think my property taxes last year were like $5,600. So probably, almost 10 times more than Tennessee. So way less property taxes. Insurance is way less. So that's one of the nice reasons, one of the beauty parts of that market. Way more profit because of those other costs are much lower by comparison to other standard vacation markets. So that is, in a nutshell, how to choose which short-term rental market. Is it a true vacation destination? Are the legislation, is the legislation in place for a long period of time in your favor? And those are the main criteria, because I want to make sure every year, the whole logic behind it is every year people are going there constantly. And lastly, I forgot to mention with Pigeon Forge, the reason there's so much demand year in and year out is because most people drive to Pigeon Forge. They don't fly in because the closest airport is Knoxville, which is about an hour away. So most people drive there. So drive from Florida, all the states in the South, the Gulf, East Coast, sometimes Northeast, Midwest, sometimes somewhat West. So we get people from all around the country that just drive there. So when things are bad and the economy turns, in recessions, people have less dollars to spend on those vacations. So instead of flying internationally or flying to a destination like in Orlando where Disney World is, okay, maybe I don't have the money to fly, but we can save that money just by driving instead of flying, and we can still have our vacation. So that's another part about Pigeon Forge I love, is because people drive there even in poor economies. So the demand is always there, it's always consistent. And as you saw from that graph earlier, that the increase in demand is just always continually growing year in and year out. So things to think about when you're choosing a short-term rental market: make sure it's a true vacation market, the legislation is in your favor, and third, ideally you want them to be driving there. It's a drivable market, and not a reliance on people flying in. That way, when things go bad, as far as from a macro perspective, you're still in good shape. So I hope this video added some value to you as far as how to choose your short-term rental market. I know it's kind of a broad subject, but hopefully that gave you some things to gnaw on. If you got any value from this video, please like the video. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, we go into not only short-term rental investing, but also growing businesses, starting businesses, mindset about personal growth. So we cover a broad array of topics here And I would love for you to comment below if you're thinking about investing in short-term rentals. What questions do you have? And specifically, which markets are you interested in? If you have what you think would be a good short-term market to invest in, please drop it in the comments below. I'm always looking at new markets outside of Pigeon Forge to potentially add in the future to expand our portfolio, because I would love to have a beach property as well. So until next time, guys, thanks so much, and thank you for subscribing.